Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Halo Wash Processed Ethiopia from Weekenders Coffee. And there's the cup right there. And yes, we are working with generic cups on this one. But Weekenders, based out of Kyoto, Japan, and I'm currently, interestingly, at a parking garage near their Nakagyo Ward location, as this is the most peaceful spot I could find. That being said, there is still a lot of traffic, so I do apologize for any sort of background noise in this video. This is Weekenders' first ever appearance on this channel, as they're a coffee roaster that rose to prominence with their placement on Roastful's Top 50 Coffee Roasters in the World list. And that caught my interest and the attention of a lot of people due to the fact that Weekenders were on the panel for that list. So I definitely wanted to swing by and check out their coffee shop for myself when I had the opportunity to do so. Now, the notes for this shop are very similar to a lot of the other coffee shops we've been to in Japan up to this point, in that you could purchase any of their current offerings as a hand brew. So this one right here was made with the V60, and I picked this one because it was the barista's top suggestion, though the one that caught my interest the most was their Kenyan coffee. The other notes about this coffee roaster is that this right here is significantly lighter than I might have expected. This one skews a little bit more on the lighter side of things relative to some of the other Japanese-based coffee roasters we've reviewed in this series. So this is actually a pretty light coffee by most standards and metrics. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee itself, as right off the bat, I noticed so many strong fruit profiles in this one, as this offered a classically washed Ethiopian profiled coffee with a lot of clarity. That's another thing I really noticed, was just an abundance of clarity, as the fruit profile within this coffee was very, very well defined. And that was skewing in the peachy sense. And a lot of people know that when I'm drinking washed Ethiopian coffees, I'm very much looking for that peachy aspect in them. And this one had them in notable abundance. And that's not uncommon with Halo coffees, as typically the Halo coffees tend to be some of my favorite washed Ethiopian coffees out there. So that was one of the first things I noticed. There was a very sort of slight citric profile to it, as well as an abundance of fresh fruit characteristics, including a fair bit of that melon-like attribute. Not a note that they had listed on here, but something that was very notable, present, and pronounced within this coffee. In addition to that, there were some more candied jasmine-like aspects to this one as well, and a very strong caramelized component. And that was the biggest takeaway I had after the first couple of sips, was just how strong that brown candy caramelized aspect in this coffee was. And it was something that I continued to take note of throughout the entirety of this review, as I'm going to go ahead and put up the tasting wheel right now so you can see what we were getting. Course notes right here. All right, and we have one level 5, and that is the clarity level 5. So I do understand that that is probably a slight bit generous, but given just how well defined the flavor profile in this coffee was, I couldn't help but score this at a level 5, as it was the cleanest coffee I'd had outside of those Tanzanian geishas that we had reviewed in this entire series. And given just how strong and well defined the peachy aspect of this coffee was, I did want to place this one at a level 5. That being said, lower side of level 5, but tremendous clarity with this coffee. And we have an abundance of level 4s. Start with the finish, level 4. Yes, so it does have a fair bit of that lasting kind of floral finish to it. A little bit of a savoriness, which is in line with the tea-like aspects that I do have listed on here. In addition to that, a slightly less defined citric component to it, but even then, a very notable and I would say just clean finish in general. Sweetness, level 4. Yes, and that came from a number of different areas in terms of all of this candied aspect. In addition to that, the fruit profiles in it. Very sweet peach, and this one felt like a caramelized peach in a good way, a lighter profiled caramelized peach aspect attribute in this coffee, so that definitely justified that level 4. Acidity, level 4. Yes, that might be the most surprising part of this coffee, as there was a fair bit more brightness than I might have expected. Not quite as bright as some of the other coffees we've reviewed, but even then it was close enough that it justified that level 4 mark for offering a fair bit of acidity as well. Berry fruit, level 4. Yes, and they have a lychee note listed on here, and I've mentioned in the past that oftentimes when I see that note on there, I expect some sort of fermenty aspect to the coffee. That being said, that definitely wasn't the case here, but I wasn't getting a whole lot of berries, much more a kind of fresh melon component to it, so that's why that scored as high as it did at that level 4. So a little bit of differences in my own experience with this coffee. Stone fruit, level 4. Yes, the peachiness is very abundant, prominent, and well-defined. Definitely on the higher side of level 4. Great peachy aspects within this coffee. And then we have a couple of actually the caramel also reached that level 4. That's just how much of a brown candied aspect there was in this coffee. And what's really funny is after I took the first couple of sips, I said, what roaster did they use? And I looked it up and it's the Probat, and that didn't come as a surprise to me whatsoever, as it honestly tasted like a Probat coffee, very sweet and brown candy forward. Then we have one level 3 actually only, interestingly, and that's a savoriness level 3. Yes, there's a little bit of that tea-like aspect in this coffee, and I actually asked the other person I was with what they were tasting from this, and they said that there was a very notable tea-like component to it, though for me the peachiness really seemed to dominate the majority of the flavor profile in this cup. Last thing worth discussing is the body at a level 1. It's not necessarily the lightest bodied cup of coffee, but I feel like it was close enough to offering that tea-like body in general that I did leave it there at that level 1. It's somewhere between a level 1 and a level 2, but as I'm looking at this tasting wheel, I do think it's a pretty good representation of what I was getting from this coffee. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. Honestly, I was a little bit more surprised than I might have expected with how much I enjoyed this one. So I really didn't know what to make of them. I just found the entirety of their placement very interesting, given that if they were as good as they advertised, then I feel like a lot of people would have either told me about them, or I would have had an opportunity to have them, or maybe some multi-roasters would have carried them over the years. But it's really surprising in the sense that that hasn't been the case up to this point, given this coffee is actually really good. I am very critical of Ethiopian coffees, and this one right here, offering so many sweeter, clean profiles to it, made it one of the more enjoyable washed Ethiopian coffees I've had, not just in this series, but the entirety of the coffees that we've reviewed this year. So I think they did an excellent job of this one, at least relative to the way a lot of washed Ethiopian coffees go in general. So credit to them in that regard. It's probably going to be one of my favorite coffees that we've had in this entire trip. So yeah, they've caught my interest and attention, and I do hope to try some more of their coffees in the future. I'm not going to lie, I didn't pick up a bag, but it's mostly because we are more than well stocked on coffees we're going to be bringing back. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to, classic washed Ethiopian characteristics. That's the first place I want to start, most specifically your peachy aspects and your candied aspects, because this one will offer tremendous clarity right from the start. And that's the other thing I really wanted to note, was just how high that clarity scored, which is always a positive indicator for these sort of coffees. In addition to that, still offering some great brightness, some nice sweetness, and even a little bit more depth in terms of the fruit profiles to it. For the most part, I think that's the best way I can leave this review. I somehow got through it with a ridiculous amount of background noise, and that's actually the end of this entire series. If you guys have had a chance actually to try this coffee, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it, or Weekenders as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Halo Wash Process Ethiopia from Weekenders Coffee. Thank you for watching.